Well, welcome everyone. My name is Carrie Grove, and I will be the Master Ceremonies for today. Very nice turnout. I'd like to welcome Your Honor, the Lieutenant Governor, members of the Legislative Assembly, members of the clergy, members of the Royal Canadian Legion, and ladies and gentlemen. We'll start off the program today, if I can get my notes proper here. And I believe that Pastor Raymond Woodward would also bring greetings, but he's not here in person. This will be on video.
Good afternoon. My name is Raymond Woodward, and I'm one of the pastors here at Capital Community Church. It's such a joy and a high honor to join you by video today for this very important commemoration. As a Christian believer, I know that everything I do should be based on the Holy Scriptures. And I read in Genesis chapter 12 and verse 3, "And I will bless them that bless thee, and curse him that curseth thee, and in thee shall all nations of the earth be blessed. I am informed by the words of the Lord to the patriarch Abraham, that if I bless the nation of Israel, I will be blessed. Any person, any nation that blesses the Jewish people will be blessed by God." As a Christian, I also know that I owe an eternal debt of gratitude to the Jewish people for their contributions to our world in so many areas, but especially since they gave birth to the Christian faith in the nation of Israel. It was Jesus Christ, a prominent rabbi from Nazareth, who said, "Salvation is of the Jews." I am grateful to our Jewish friends and their ancestors for giving us the sacred scriptures, the prophets, the patriarchs, all the wonderful books of history and poetry that inform our faith and unite us together. It is not possible to say I am a Christian and not love the Jewish people. Psalm 122 verse 6 says, "Pray for the peace of Jerusalem. They shall prosper that love thee," especially in light of the events that are happening in our world today, war and racism, division and hatred and strife. It is so important that we come together for occasions like this, that we join together our prayer, we join together our energies and our efforts, and we join together our memories. And today we say, at this very important Holocaust commemoration, never forget and never again. Thank you for allowing me the privilege of joining this important event today. Good afternoon. My name is Raymond Woodward.
The Holocaust was the Nazis' attempt to murder the Jewish people, first in Europe and ultimately everywhere in the world if they could, based on their racist anti-Semitic ideology, which saw the Jews as an ultimate evil. The project the Nazis undertook regarding the Jews began in 1933 in their search for a solution to the problem that they saw regarding the Jews, and progressed through various stages and developments right until the end of World War II in 1945. 1933 was a critical turning point in history and in the history of the story of the Holocaust. The Nazis came to power via democratic means and then proceeded to use the machinery of democracy to dismantle democracy and ultimately to pursue those whom they defined as their archenemy and the ultimate evil, and those were the Jewish people. At the time the Nazis came to power, there were approximately 16 to 17 million Jews in the world, of whom there were about 9 million in Europe at the time, and in Germany itself, approximately 500,000 or slightly more than that. The Nazis began their pursuit of the Jews and looking for a solution to their problem with the Jews, what they called the Jewish question, from the moment they came to power in 1933. They looked for ways to separate the Jews from German society, in the economy, in politics, in civil society, in culture, and in everything. They boycotted the Jews, passed laws against the Jews, disenfranchised the Jews, kicked the Jews out of citizenship, and tried to force the Jews to emigrate from the Third Reich as a way of relieving Germany of this threat that the Nazis imagined. The climax of all that, of the Nazi treatment of the Jews, came in November 1938 with the violent, nationally organized Kristallnacht pogrom, in which thousands of Jewish stores were destroyed, homes were destroyed, more than 1,500 synagogues were burned to the ground, more than 100 Jews were murdered, 30,000 Jewish men were arrested and taken to concentration camps and to prisons. And this pressure on the Jews to leave, to be separated from society, continued and pushed the Jews indeed. Many were leaving as time went on, looking for places to go. In the course of the pre-war years, 1933 to September 1939, approximately half of the German Jews actually left Germany. On September 1st, 1939, Germany invaded Poland, and that brought the beginning of World War II. And with the invasion of Poland, they suddenly had in their hands an additional nearly 2 million Jews. Months after that, they invaded Scandinavia and conquered Norway and Denmark, and then Western Europe, and conquered Holland and Belgium and Luxembourg and France. And with all of these conquests, by the summer of 1940, Germany found itself now not with the problem of a few 100,000 Jews inside the Third Reich, but with the problem of several million Jews across territories they had conquered in Europe. And they continued their pursuit of some solution to this problem. They looked for places to send the Jews. Perhaps they could create some gigantic ghetto somewhere. They thought about the Lublin area as one of those solutions. That didn't work. Perhaps they could shove all the Jews into the Soviet Union, but that didn't work either. The Soviet Union was not going to receive millions of Jews simply because Germany wanted to get rid of them. By the end of 1942, the Germans had already murdered millions of Jews, but there were still remaining before them many Jews, more millions, all over Europe and North Africa, whom they wanted to capture and to bring to the murder centers in order to kill them. And they embarked on that mission during the course of 1943 and the subsequent years until the end of World War II, where the murder did not stop until the end of the war. Auschwitz, what became ultimately the largest and most industrialized murder center of the entire history, Auschwitz came online fully during the course of 1943. All of the gas chambers at Birkenau, the murder center of Auschwitz-Birkenau, were online by the summer of 1943 and were now prepared to kill all these arriving Jews. Jews from Greece, Jews from Italy, and the peak, the Jews from Hungary. In the course of the spring and summer of 1944, some 437,000 Jews from Hungary were brought to Auschwitz, and nearly all of them killed upon arrival in a period of just 8 weeks. Ultimately, Auschwitz murdered more than 1 million people, nearly all of them Jews. As the Red Army approached Auschwitz, the Germans shut down the murder operations at Auschwitz, and they marched out the majority of the remaining prisoners, some 57,000 approximately, in a death march through the snow without any provisions, shooting thousands on the way as they marched them towards Germany. And only a few thousand were remaining in the camp itself when the Soviets arrived on January 27th of 1945. So if we come to sum up the Holocaust, we can say that the Nazis achieved some of their goals, but they did not achieve all of their goals. They murdered 6 million Jews. The Jews have never replenished their numerical numbers. If before the war there were between 16 and 17 million Jews, at the end of World War II there were fewer than 11 million. And today, at the peak of Jewish growth since World War II, there are approximately 13 million Jews in the world. They seriously damaged aspects of Jewish culture in Ladino and Yiddish and other things. They wiped out Jewish communities that have never been reconstituted and have been essentially wiped off the map. In that sense, the Nazis achieved some of their goals, but the Nazis also failed because the Jewish people are still here. The Jewish people did not win World War II. The Jewish people survived World War II. But in that survival lies the Nazi failure.
Okay, at this time, I'd like to ask our Rabbi Joseph Goldman to please come up and explain about the songs we're about to hear this afternoon.
Pastor Woodward said it in the most beautiful way. The first song that we're going to sing is Hine ma tov u'mana'im shevet achim gam yachad. Behold, how beautiful and how pleasant it is to have all of us brothers and sisters sitting here together. Shevet literally means sitting. And like he said, he's not here personally, but he is here in spirit. There are people here from every single community in Fredericton. And it's incredible. David, when he wrote this psalm, he basically envisioned that there will be a time when people will come together, and it doesn't have to be a Holocaust commemoration service, but the fact that we are here together is that message that it is beautiful and pleasant, and we are happy to be here together. The second song we're going to sing is Ani Ma'amin, which is Eli, which is written by one of the Jewish volunteers to try to help the European Jews. She was captured almost immediately after parachuting into Hungary, occupied Hungary, and was killed. But before she was captured, she wrote a few poems, and one of them is this message that Eli, Eli, my God, may the song of the sea, the song of people, the voice of people, and everything else that is so basic for our human existence continue forever. We're also going to read in Psalm 23, of course, which talks about how God helps us and protects us throughout our travails. And in that context, we declare Ani Ma'amin, which means I believe. I believe with complete faith that the Messiah will come and will redeem us from all the troubles that are in the world. Last but not least, we sing Hashivenu, which literally means bring us back to you. The prophets had a very interesting relationship with God. Pastor Woodward mentioned them in passing, but it will take a lifetime to truly understand every single word that the prophets actually said. One of the arguments that they had with God, not with each other, was who has to make the first step? Is it me, the individual? Is it us, the nation? Is it us, the community? Or does God have to make the first step? And it's basically said in the most beautiful way in the Song of Solomon, where the beloved talks about how her beloved, which we believe is God, is knocking on the door and says, open up. And we have all kinds of excuses. I'm already wearing my nightie. I just finished bathing. I'm not going to step in the mud and, So Hashivenu is basically our response to saying, yes, God, you called us to make the first step, but we are weak. We are very weak. And so, especially with everything that we went through, and it's not only the Jewish people, every single person here who believed went through some kind of stress and pain in order to get where we are today. So we are saying to God, Hashivenu, bring us back to you, and you make the first step because we can't. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for that wonderful rendition. It's my pleasure right now to introduce our guest speaker for today, Leonard Vis. If you take a look at your program, here his biography is there. There's no sense in me reading the entire thing, but very quickly, Leonard was born in Amsterdam in 1930. His family went into hiding in the summer of 1942. His siblings were sheltered separately. His parents stayed together. Leonard was arrested in a raid in his hiding place by the Gestapo and local police. During his transport to Westerbork Transit Camp on Yom Kippur in 1943, he managed to jump from the train, returned to his caregivers, and was reunited with the family. In 1954, Leonard emigrated to the United States, where he was drafted and served in the military again. He saw service in Austria and Germany. In New York, he worked for Quaker Oats, Pan American Airways, and Grand Advertising. He joined the prestigious advertising firm of Young Rubicam in 1959. 1967, after working in the continent and UK, he was transferred to a Toronto office. He's now retired. He and his wife Dorothy live quietly in Toronto. Leonard has done this presentation to a number of different audiences, and at his age, he's a devoted Uber driver. So without further ado, let me introduce our guest speaker, Leonard Vis.
Thank you.
Okay. We'll take the mic.
Yeah. Good afternoon. This is an act of remembrance. This is what those who perished wanted and asked. At least, let us be remembered. If we fail to do so, they surely died in vain. We are meeting here to commemorate and to deplore a monstrous event in the history of mankind, a crime of unsurpassed magnitude. Excuse me. That's what water is for. What went wrong? How did that Holocaust come about? How did it happen in front of our eyes? In most countries in Europe and other parts of the world as well. In the time of my disposal, I will try to give you a retrospective impression of the Holocaust as I experienced it in Holland. I was there. I experienced it, and I also want to give you a correlation with our life and times today. Mind you, I'm not a historian, not a writer, not an editor, not just an observer. No, I was there. I lived it, and I have an opinion about it, and I want to share that with you. When the First World War ended, the Austro-Hungarian Empire ended. The German Empire is no more, neither is the Ottoman Empire. Life has come, albeit for a limited time, to a halt. Language barriers, population distribution, national boundaries, and inter-European agreements are all in disarray. And someone gets to blame. The Kaiser has fled to Holland, Franz Joseph is dead, the Tsar has been murdered, and the laws of the land failed to protect its inhabitants. In 1918, after the end of World War I, 50 Jews are killed by Ukrainian nationalists in Lvov. In 1919, a massacre of 1,700 Jews in Proskurov, 80 Jews in Vilna, 500 in Galicia. The leader of the Ukrainian nationalists is a certain Simon Petlura. He's kicked out of the country, goes to Paris, and is there assassinated in 1926. In the meantime, the Nazi National Socialist Party is founded in 1920. Adolf Hitler is one of the founders, and his book, Mein Kampf, My Struggle, becomes the spiritual doctrine. The trend of the party is to be against all reparations Germany has to make to the Allied powers under the Treaty of Versailles. And they are, of course, opposed to the current regime, the Weimar Republic. On New Year's Day 1930, the waters were tested in Berlin, where 8 Jewish business owners were murdered. There was no outcry. In the general election of that year, the National Socialist German Labour Party increased its seats in parliament from 12 to 107. It became the second largest party. The Catholic People's Party were number 1. In the election of 1932, Hitler's party captures 230 seats and wins a clear majority. It opens the way for the leader of the party to become the leader of government, the prime minister and chancellor. It's a little known fact that to this very day, most Germans had never seen a Jew. On a population of 60 million people, there were about barely 500,000 Jews, less than 1% of the population. Most of them looked German, acted German, and thought German. In World War I, 10% of them fought as soldiers and airmen for Germany. 10% of them, 50,000. We in Holland noticed the increased presence of German immigrants. Refugees is a better word. They enriched our cultural and religious life, but they also warned us that Holland was being threatened by Hitler's Germany. It is all part, we hoped, would never happen, secretly feared that it would, and found ourselves utterly unprepared to handle it when it did happen. Does anybody remember when Italy invaded Ethiopia? Japan invaded Manchuria and China. Germany occupied Czechoslovakia. Germany annexed Austria. Germany and Russia attacked Poland. Russia declared war on Finland. And so, with almost fatal inevitability, the end of the dream came nearer. After invading Denmark and Norway, Germany declared war on Holland, Belgium and Luxembourg, and our war had begun in earnest. It is May the 10th, 1940, and there my story begins. I'm talking to you today of how I survived the Holocaust. I didn't do that on my own. Nobody can do that. You need helpers, you need luck, and you need common sense. And that's a very tall order. Holocaust or show is a word that you learn after the fact. It's an accumulation of events that are designed to kill you. How do I know at age 9 in 1940, when the Germans overrun my home country, Holland, that my life is about to change? My father loses his job. I can no longer go to a park, a zoo, a public pool, or a movie. I have to change to a Jewish school. I overhear my parents talk about work camps. I have to wear a yellow star with the word Jew on it. My family and I have to move to the Amsterdam ghetto. But before some of that happened, imagine a bleak, dreary, rainy Sabbath morning in November of 1941. My father, my brother, who is 7, and I are returning from synagogue. And suddenly, a man steps out of his driveway and positions himself in front of us. It looks like he had been waiting for us. He wants to ask my father a question. The man looks quite nice, acts with obvious concern. My father decides to answer him. Yes, we are Jewish. He smiles and he says, I thought so. I know a bit about Jews. And I see you come by here every Saturday with your sons. Nice kids, by the way. But that's not the only thing that he wants to know. What are you going to do to avoid being put to work with your family in the East? My father has no answer. His non-Jewish friends are afraid to be in contact with him. They want to see from afar how this thing with the Jews shakes out. And his Jewish friends are in the same boat that he's in. And the man says, and this is one of the most incredible things one human being can say to another, may I help you? May I help you to avoid being sent to the East? Despite my father's protest that he doesn't want him to endanger himself, the man persists. He wants to come to talk with my father and with my mother about going into hiding. about disappearing from the scene, about becoming invisible to the German authorities, as it were, about survival in the homes and in the complete care of strangers. It's a gamble of the highest order, but it is the only means of survival. In the camps in the East, and we didn't really know what the East was all about. It was the eternal word between quotation marks. Survival is too chancy to be considered an option. My parents decide to listen to Uncle Bill as we come to know him. We are going into hiding. My parents together, my brother Arthur, my sister Anita, and I separately. Our situation becomes urgent when soon after our arrival in Amsterdam in June 1942, the first notifications are being sent out to young Jews to report to the labor camps in the East. Uncle Bill decides that the time has come for my brother and sister to leave and go into hiding. A lady comes to pick them up, and they leave the house after a quick goodbye. My father breaks down in tears and asks me if I would look after mother and the kids if he would not survive this. What can you say at such a moment? Yes, Pa. Jews had to hand over their bicycles to the Germans. Kiddie bicycles were exempt, and I become a messenger for the chief of the Jewish food services in Amsterdam. I'm 11 years old, and this is my own initiative. Interesting enough, I can add, it has added some money to me from the German civil service because I was a worker in the Amsterdam ghetto from June 1942 till August 42. 280 euro a month. Not bad for a kid, 11 years old. More and more people are being called up to go east via Westerbork, a transit camp on the Dutch-German border. My time to go into hiding is approaching fast. At night, during the enforced curfew for Jews, whole streets are being combed out to fill the trains to Westerbork and beyond. On August the 12th, I say goodbye to my parents and leave the house with a special present for my dad, a prayer book, a siddur, as it is called in Hebrew, bound in a lovely piece of talit, prayer shawl. And here comes the first item of what I call survival skills and street smarts into play, because that is ultimately how I survived. My dad did not realize how lethal this present could be for a kid who had just removed the yellow star from his coat and who was going to pass as a non-Jew on his way to a hiding place. A cursory check by a policeman or soldier in a public vehicle could have undone all the efforts to help me survive. There were public waste paper baskets in Amsterdam in those years, and regrettably, that is where the prayer book went. Even as a child, I was too much of a gentleman. I never told my father. He never knew. This is an example of what I call street smarts, as in the title of my talk, survival skills and street smarts. A street smart person is someone who is intelligent, has good common sense, knows how to handle bad situations, and has the skills necessary to function where they live or work. There's more of this to come. Time to go now to my new home, a cabin in the woods. I would urge all you adults, fathers, grandparents, to teach your kids the elementaries of survival, how to handle yourself in strange situations. Think about things and make it a learning experience. I had to learn by myself. I'm living in a cabin in the woods. I have to look after myself, make my own breakfast, teach them to make breakfast, and my own lunch, teach them to make lunch. And at age 11, I seem to be in charge of a lot of things. Making my bed, sweeping the floor, keeping a neat dwelling, Here are the lessons. And presenting a clean appearance. At night, I go to the main house where I'm given dinner. I'm very aware that I'm representing the Jews in the eyes of my host, and that I have to be worthy of their care. They should only have the best of impressions of me. On September 16, I have my 12th birthday. I receive a parcel with delicious snacks. I'm allowed to send a note to my parents, who in the meantime went into hiding themselves. Instead of writing the usual thank you note, thank you, Pa and Ma, for all the lovely things and 1,000 kisses from Leonard, I elect to send them a summary of all that I have received. That way they can check if what they have sent actually got there. My parents were so impressed that they kept that note. I still have it to this very day. A young man, Joe, joins me in the cabin. He's about 22, 23, and he will help me with some schoolwork, so I will not miss too much after the war. He's nice company. Meanwhile, the war continues. The persecution of the Jews increases in severity. The weather gets colder. The cabin is not winterized or insulated. And there's not even a stove. In November, Joe and I are being moved to warmer quarters. Through an associate of Uncle Bill, both Joe and I are placed with a nice family. Father, mother, 2 sons and 2 daughters. Good food, good feelings, and a large, well-heated home. Aside from Joe and I, there are other Jews in hiding. Our host is Jewish, his wife is not. They're sheltering one of his brothers and 3 of his sisters. 2 of the sisters bring a son. And there come more people in search of a place to hide from the ongoing persecution of the Jews. I learn a lot in their company. Songs, games, stories, tales of adventure and travel. I've also been given some tasks. Keeping the room clean, making my bed, peeling potatoes. I learned to clean vegetables. I like doing that. I have my own knife and my own way of doing it, and it's accepted, as long as I get the job done. I become friends with the greengrocer, a nice man. I also have to dry the dishes. By now, May 1943, there are 26 Jews in hiding, and we need to get a larger place. The local underground secures a home for us. The police make sure that our travel to the new home in the early morning arouses no suspicion. A general curfew for the general public helps a great deal. We make it in time, to the relief of everybody. I share a room with Robbie, a nephew of our host. We get along very well. He's my age, and we have a lot of school experiences in common. And Joe now has other interests, as 2 young women have joined our group. On September 16, 1943, I turned 13. A birthday party is organized, complete with a birthday cake and my favorite pudding, vanilla and fruit. Rosh Hashanah, Jewish New Year, September the 30th, 1943. We're being warned by the police that 2 men from the Gestapo, with some local policemen, are on their way to raid our house. We have been betrayed by a friend of the family. Our hiding place is known. No place to hide anymore. We come out. Interrogation follows. I give a fictitious account on how I happened to be there and play ultra dumb and stupid. My interrogators dismiss me. I'm clearly not important enough. And I'm given 20 minutes to pack a bag. I take my underwear, socks, my first aid kit, my Swiss Army knife, toiletries, etc. A moving van is requisitioned to take us to the nearest prison in Haarlem. 28 persons have been apprehended that day. a fine catch for the Gestapo, and a bounty for the betrayer of about $150. We are unaware of the fate of our host and his family. From the prison, we are moved to the Jewish theater, the general collection point in Amsterdam. It serves as the holding area for the Jews who are destined to go by train to Westerbork. There they are being processed for transport to the labor camps in the east. Everything was very administratively kosher, you know. You did not believe you were going for destruction. You believed this was the way it was done. It was orderly, it was properly done, and you had no choice. An SS guard directs the children to the left, to the kids' dormitory, and the adults to the right. Adults are to register the children, and I go to the left to find a bunk and a blanket. My coat is my pillow until one shows up. Next stop is the auditorium. The seats have been removed, and people are camping on the floor. A strange sight. I'm in luck. I see two familiar faces, Aunt Betsy and Uncle Henry, friends of my parents. They're here because they are protected by papers from Cuba. Papers from Cuba. Of course, there was no boat at that time that went from Holland to Cuba. But Cuba was not at war with Germany at that time. So it offered somewhat of a protection. And any smidgen of a protection was worthwhile. They want to know if my family is okay. I confirm that, yes. Uncle Henry wants to know how I'm registered here. He must have some connection with the administration. He comes back, grinning from ear to ear, and tells me that I'm not registered. I'm an administrative mistake, and I better make the most of it. What to do? Uncle Henry has a plan. I have to leave the place on Friday night, together with the Westerbork transport. If I'm found on Saturday morning, I will be registered and sent on with the transport the next Friday. That needs to be avoided. The plan is as follows. I am to become friends with a boy my age who is part of a larger family. I have to become friendly with all of them and hang out with them during the day. On the Friday night, Kol Nidre, as it happens to be, the eve of Yom Kippur, the holiest Jewish day of the calendar, I must be in their vicinity when their names are being called out for the transport. At that very moment, I am to run out of the theater with them to the streetcars, which will take us to the train. That's the plan. It sounds good, I like it, and I can do it. Every day, Aunt Betsy gets a pot of warm food from her maid, delivered to the theater. Since my arrival in her life, that has been increased to 3 hard-boiled eggs. Every morning, I get an egg. Truth to tell, I do not like eggs. In my quest for a suitable friend with an equally suitable family, that daily egg comes in very handy. I found Sam, who proved to be an enjoyable buddy and who appreciated his daily egg. His family was very nice towards me. He had 2 younger sisters and an older brother. Friday night approached. The plan worked well. I took the streetcar with them, but separated on purpose from them, as I did not want them to be a hindrance in my escape. Once seated in a railroad carriage with strangers, I explained that I was not known on this transport and that I was not listed on the manifest. I would not be missed on any roll call, and that it was my intent to jump from the train as soon as the train was well out of sight of the city. Mind you, this is a kid who just turned 13 and who practices street smarts and survival skills. It was a nasty, dark, and rainy night. I jumped from the running board of the compartment. It was a choo-choo train, didn't go very fast. And I rolled down the embankment. I saw the train disappear, and nobody seemed to have noticed my jump. I waited till daylight to remove the yellow stars from my clothing with the scissors of my Swiss Army knife. Since I had sewn them on myself, it was an easy job. I knew I had to take them off. Around 9 a.m. I got up, straightened myself out, and started to walk towards the city. I had money in my pocket. Always have money in your pocket. No credit cards in those years, cash. And boarded the first streetcar that I saw to get to the center of Amsterdam. From there I knew where to go to an address that had been given to me by one of Uncle Bill's helpers if I ever were in need of a place to stay, and that place was now. I received a warm welcome and an invitation to a soccer match for that very afternoon. It was by now Yom Kippur, but I accepted nevertheless. Yom Kippur is a fasting day. I accepted nevertheless. It was a dumb thing to do, but we people in hiding always aim to please. That's the reality, not an excuse. My refuge in Amsterdam was very nice. My host, an elderly couple with an adult daughter, were very caring, but I knew that I couldn't stay there. Uncle Bill's people started looking. They did not have to look long. Cornelius, the greengrocer at my previous address, stepped forward and said that he and his wife Albertina would take me in. They volunteered. I was truly wanted. Cor and Albertina had a son, 5-year-old Jake, and she was expecting her second child. They lived in a small house in a courtyard with 5 similar homes. The rent was $2 a week. And instead of a bathroom, there was what you call in Canadian parlance an outhouse. It's quite a challenge if you're not allowed to go outside, if you got to go. You have to change your inner plumbing. That's the only way to cope with that. In December, my father came for a visit. He had been very depressed. The war and being shut in do that to you. Cor thought it a good idea for him to stay for a couple of weeks to get back to normal. It worked out very well. It was wonderful to have my dad nearby. He left 2 weeks after New Year's, a much improved person. It changed my relationship to my father completely, and that in this event he was dependent on me, and I became more, if you can understand that, more of a daughter to him than a, hey buddy, son. It was very, very providential actually. In May 1944, Albertina gives birth to a baby girl. In addition to my household chores, I get to look after the baby. Feeding, bathing, diapering. It's good fun. The baby is sweet. Honey is her name, and she's bright as a button. The war continues. In June, the Allies invade Europe. Their progress is slow, and when my birthday comes about, the 1st British Airborne Division has parachuted into Arnhem. They lose that gamble, and freedom passes us by. My parents, who are now in hiding with my sister Anita, can no longer stay at their present location. They're undernourished, they're cold and weary. The food situation in Holland is precarious, especially since the railroads are no longer operating. Uncle Bill pays a visit to Cor and Albertina, who is now expecting her 3rd baby, and asks for help. There was no television in those years, you know, you stayed home. My mother and Anita are taken in by neighbors. She is a midwife who lives with her father, a retired fisherman. My father will sleep in the attic as he did the year before. And so we enter the last phase of the war. My brother reportedly is in hiding in the eastern part of Holland. He's even going to school. The food shortages are becoming very serious, and Cornelius is beginning to use his trade supply of potatoes and vegetables to feed us. There is no relief in sight. I feel guilty about not making any contributions to the food situation. I take my Swiss Army knife and go to the harbor, where there are ships with the potatoes. I am lucky, a shipper's son wants it and will give me a big sack of potatoes in exchange. Getting the bag home is quite a job. On May 5th, 1945, Germany surrenders and we're free. Father says, nobody goes outside. A stray bullet can ruin everything we have been trying to save. Smart advice, he's right. We postpone our celebration for a couple of days. On May the 30th, Albertina gives birth to a healthy baby girl. In due course, my brother returns to the fold. And as of September, we're all enrolled in school, together with my cousin Hans, whose parents were murdered in Auschwitz, and who comes to live with us. When my father reported to the administrative office of the city in which we lived, the welcome was extremely cordial. Oh, you're still around, eh? My survival has empowered me. I may have been behind in knowledge, but I was way ahead in skills and self-confidence. Of course, time was needed to come to a proper adjustment of these traits. Eventually, all of these experiences could be grouped together under the heading of street smarts. You're not born with them. You have to acquire them, learn them, keep your eyes and your brain open at all times. I hope that every one of you now understand what street smarts are and how to turn them to your advantage, as I have done during my time in hiding and thereafter. And remember, it's the second mouse that gets the cheese. I wish you good luck and a good journey in life. Thank you.
Cheers. You're welcome. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Leonard, for sharing a fabulous story with us. I think that might make a good special on Netflix, especially your escape from the train. Well done. Okay. Next, I'd like to invite Pam Phillips to come up and do a rendition of Ailey Ailey. Thank you, Pam. For those of you who have been to other Holocaust memorial services here or across the river, the synagogue we did for a number of years, we've always have had this ceremony of lighting candles. There are 6 candles to represent the 6 million Jews that were killed in the Holocaust. There is also an extra candle here, which we'll save for later, and that is really a candle for hope for the future. The other candle I'm going to have here, we can use to, hang on a second. Here we go. For those of you who understand, in Hanukkah, they have a shamas, which is the main candle to light the other candles. So we'll use this candle to light the other ones. And I'm going to call upon a number of different people to come up. And those who do come up can light a candle. They can say something, say a prayer. Don't have to say anything. But the first person I'd like to call up is our guest speaker, Leonard Vis. Say any few words, Leonard?
This is a very hard task. I live with this every day. My wife lives with me every day and has been for 55 years. She is not a Holocaust survivor. I would like to dedicate this candle to her and to all those who give support to us the Germans failed to kill. Thank you.
I'll take the mic back.
Okay.
Thank you. All right, thank you, Leonard. I'd like to ask Vera Woodward to come up and light the second candle.
Oh, no.
No, okay. This is the one we want to take. Yeah, I'll help you. Here we go. Thank you. Thank you, Vera. I'd like to ask Rabbi Goldman and his wife Shani Goldman to come up and light the third candle. Rabbi, you want to say anything?
One of the most beautiful verses in Psalm 119 is that a candle represents a soul. And so the fact that we can't light 6 million candles here is unbelievable. But like Carrie said, we do represent each million with one candle. So I'd like to dedicate it to those who perished.
Rabbi, thank you. Okay. For the fourth candle, I'd like to invite Pam Phillips to come back. That's got a bigger wick. Thank you. Okay, thank you, Pam. Okay, to light the fifth candle, I would like to invite the co-presidents of our synagogue, Louis and Shelley. Shelley Stevens, Lou Budovich. Do you want to say anything?
Don't say good words. Say something.
Lou, you want to say anything?
No, say something. Just thank you.
On behalf of myself, Shelley Stevens, and Louis Budovich, co-presidents of the synagogue, I want to thank everybody for coming here today and joining us, bridging the gap of coming together in a union and being one and helping each other. Thank you.
Thank you, Shelley. Lou. Okay, to light the sixth candle, I'd like to invite Pastor Jack Lehman and his wife Kathy.
It's the third verse from the beginning of Scripture that says, God said, let there be light. I'm so thankful for that light.
Thank you, Jack. All right, there's one more candle sitting all by itself. It's not part of the six array at the top. And this one is for hope for the future. And in order to do that, I'd like to invite some young people up to light that candle. And that's going to be Shauna Brooker, and Michelle Gimmelstein. Okay. I'll just step back here. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, that concludes the candle lighting ceremony. We'll go on to the next part of our presentation today, and that would be the CCC Chorale. I'd like to ask Ricky Pellet and Pastor Matthew Woodward to come up and recite the 23rd Psalm. Ricky will do it in Hebrew, and Matthew will do it in English.
I'm starting? מזמור לדוד השם, רואי לא אחסר, בנאות דשא ירביצני, על מי מנוחות ינעלני. נפשי ישובב, ינחני במעגלי צדק למען שמו, גם כי ילך בגיא וצל מוות, לא אירע רע, כי אתה עמדי שבטך, משענתך המה ינחמני. תערוך לפני שלוחן נגד צרורי, דשנת בשמן ראשי, כוסי רוויה, אך טוב וחסד ירדפוני כל ימי חיי, ושבתי בבית השם לאורך הימים.
A psalm by David. Hashem is my shepherd, I shall not lack. In lush meadows he lays me down. Beside tranquil waters he leads me. He restores my soul. He leads me on paths of justice for his name's sake. Though I walk in the valley overshadowed by death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in view of my tormentors. You anointed my head with oil. My cup overflows. May only goodness and kindness pursue me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of Hashem for long days. Thank you, Gary.
Okay. Rabbi Goldman, care to come up and we'll recite the Kel Mali Rachamim.
מלא רחמים, דיין אלמנות ואבי יתומים. אל נא תחשב ותתאפק לדם ישראל שנשפך כמים. המצא מנוחה נכונה על כנפי השכינה, במעלות קדושים וטהורים כזוהר כמזהירים ומאירים. לנשמותיהם של רבבות אלפי ישראל, אנשים, נשים, ילדים וילדות, שנהרגו ושנשחטו ושנשרפו ושנחנקו ונקבעו חיים. בארצות אשר נגע בהן היד הצרור הגרמני וגוריו, כולם קדושים וטהורים ובהם גאונים מאוד צדיקים ורזי לבון ואדירי תורה. בגן עדן תהיה מנוחתם, לכן בעל החיים עשינו סופר לעולמים, ויצרו ובצורך לנשמתם. אדוני ינחה אותם וינוחו בשלום משכבם, ונאמר אמן.
Thank you, Rabbi. I'd like to invite Dr. Israel Unger to recite the mourner's Kaddish.
No, I think I'm okay, thank you. The mourner's Kaddish is one of the central and most frequently recited prayers in the Jewish liturgy. Its origins date to the 5th century BC. It started when a rabbi passed away and his students gathered to mourn him, and they decided that the best way they could honor their rabbi was to praise the name of the Lord. Interestingly, the Kaddish is in Aramaic, not in Hebrew. And while unambiguously denotes mourning, there is no mention of death or of the deceased in the prayer. The Kaddish is a magnification and sanctification
of God's name and was inspired by Ezekiel's vision of God becoming great in the eyes of all nations. Initially, during the mourning period of a rabbi or teacher, students would gather to study in his honor, and his son would recite the prayer. Over time, the custom extended to all mourners. The Kaddish is recited by a mourner following the death of a close relative for 11 months, and then each year on the anniversary of the death. Should there be no relative, then any adult can recite the prayer. The Kaddish is considered one of the most important obligations one has to the deceased. My father, who was a young teenager during the First World War, told me that the Austrian army facing the Russian army was very close to the town that he lived in. And if a Jewish Austrian soldier or a Jewish Russian soldier died, a truce would be declared, and the Jewish soldiers from each side would gather together to say Kaddish. After the Holocaust, my father picked the Day of Atonement, Yom Kippur, as the anniversary date to recite Kaddish for all his relatives and my mother's relatives murdered by the Nazis. Most of the 6 million Jews who were murdered in the Holocaust had no one to say Kaddish for them. So let us now recite Kaddish for them. I will recite the prayer in Aramaic first, and then in English. The Jewish tradition is for the congregation to respond. May his name be blessed forever and ever. Please join me when we reach that point. In the Jewish tradition, it is customary to stand when the Kaddish is being recited. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, b'yalma divrachatei v'yamlich malchatei, b'hayechoin v'yoimechoin v'hai the whole Beit Yisrael, b'gala v'zman kariv imru amen. Yehei shmei Rabbah mevarach le'olam v'olmaya. Yitbarach, Yishtabach, Yitboar, Yitramam, Yitnaseh, Yithadar, Yithalal, Yithalel, Shemei de Kadsha Bericho. Le'elu min kol beruchu, v'sharosa tishbachasa v'nechamasa, damiram bialmo v'imru, amen. Oleinu v'alkol, Yehei shalom oleinu v'rabba min shemai v'chaim, oleinu v'alkol Yisrael v'imru, amen. Oise shalom b'mramav, hu yase shalom uleinu, v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. May his great name grow exalted and sanctified in the world that he created as he willed. May he give reign to his kingship in your lifetimes and in your days and in the lifetimes of the entire family of Israel, swiftly and soon. And say amen. May his great name be blessed forever and ever. Blessed, praised, glorified, exalted, extolled, mighty, upraised, and lauded be the name of the Holy One. Blessed is he beyond any blessing and song, praise, and consolation that are uttered in the world. And say amen. He who makes peace in his high heavens, may he make peace upon us, upon all Israel, and upon all people, and say, amen.
Coming down is At this time, I'd like Rabbi Goldman to come back and recite the Mishapreach.
Like I said about the first song, this prayer to God is to bless all the people who came here. So it's very appropriate, even on Shabbat morning when we recite it towards the end of the prayer, basically thanking and welcoming everybody, and especially the people who made such big efforts to make this evening what it is. מי שברך אבותינו אברהם יצחק ויעקב, הוא יברך את כל הקהל הקדוש הזה עם כל קהילות הקודש, הם ונשיהם ובני אבותיהם וכל אשר להם, ומי שמייחדים בתי כנסיות לתפילה, ומי שבאים לתוכם להתפלל, ומי שנותנים לנו אור ויין לקידוש ולהבדלה, ופת לאורחים וצדקה לעניים, וכל מי שעוסקים בצורכי ציבור באמונה, הקדוש ברוך הוא ישלם שכרם, ויסיר מהם כל מחלה, וירפא לכל גופם, ויסלח לכל עוונם, וישלח ברכה, ברכה והצלחה, בכל מעשה ידיהם, עם כל ישראל, ישראל לכם, ונאמר, 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 אמן.
Okay. Pastor Lehman, pass the mic to you.
Thank you, Carrie. I'd just like to say on behalf of Schooley Synagogue and Capital Community Church, thank you so very, very much to all of our participants today, and then also not only the participants, but everyone that came to join with us in communicating this message of the Holocaust Memorial. And we know that it's a very heavy subject, and it's a responsibility that we embrace wholeheartedly. And I I would just encourage you today. We're going to end in a few moments. Carrie will come back to close. But somewhere in the midst of this congregation, there are probably friendships that have yet to be formed and connections that have yet to be made. We're going to take a little time to eat together. But amidst all of these powerful, powerful stories that we have heard, powerful prayers, communication, the message that is beneath all of that is that we can never allow this atrocity or this hatred to happen again. And we have just learned to communicate that message in 2 words along with all of you. It's just simply never again. And I'm just wondering on the count of 3 if you would join me in saying those 2 powerful words, because that's the lesson that we would like to leave with today. 1, 2, 3, never again. And our responsibility that we sense, and I love how this service has mingled the generations, and we have some elders amongst us, and I'm thankful for young people that have sensed the need to be here with us this afternoon. And our role and our goal, we feel, is that this next generation, of which I'm realizing I'm no longer a part of, I'm part of that middle-aged group now. I'm not young anymore. But that our young people would embrace this message and that they would be able to articulate and communicate the whys for never again. And so I thank you for coming. Thank you for sharing in this memorial service today. I thank all of you. It's just been our true honor to have you on campus. And on behalf of all of us, if there's anything that we can do for you today and beyond today, we welcome you to reach out and whatever we can do. If there's a way that we can help, we'll be sure to. If we can't, we'll find someone that can help. And I just wanted to end our portion this way. I bring Carrie back. I thank him for being such a wonderful MC of our service today. And thank you all for being with us.